All right, and welcome to the CodeX Cantina, where today we're going to be wrapping up the Wizard and Glass series that we have.
Finally.
Oh man, I already know how you feel with that. You feel weathered, my friend, don't you?
I feel weathered.
Okay, let's dive into that. So we are wrapping up the last part of our book. If you followed us from the last few sessions, which I hope you have, we are coming up from Part 3, Section 4. Part 3, Chapter 4 was where we stopped last time, and we finished the book. So basically, the ending of Reaping Day, as well as the Wizard of Oz section, is kind of the sections that we're covering here today.
Yeah, and I think this is probably the best part of the whole book, with the action and all the sad stuff and the conclusion. So
first, my first talking point is the orbs as Palantirs. So I like how the orbs in this kind of give me that Palantir vibe, which if you didn't know, those were the globes from the Lord of the Rings. Like if you watch the movies, they had the globe that they got from Saruman. They weren't created by him, but they were used by him and kind of distributed, and that's how he tainted and corrupted basically Saruman and Denethor, loosely is my understanding, is by using those and corrupting their minds. And that's kind of what we have here with these, with Merlin's, what's it called? Merlin's Rainbow?
Merlin's Rainbow.
Yeah. So we have him kind of distributing these things. In the same way that Sauron's never seen, we've never seen the Crimson King. In the same way that the Sauron corrupted and created and turned people to evil, that's kind of what Crimson King is doing here as well.
I always get a little confused on why he's trying to sow even more chaos when he seems to be doing it successfully. And when he's giving out the orbs, giving out the glass, they're killing the people, his instruments of chaos.
Are they killing themselves or are they spreading it?
Yeah. I guess so, like, take Rhea, for example. I mean, she was definitely wicked and good for the Crimson King and destruction of the tower, and it sucked her dry.
Well, I like how it is corrupting people, and there is clearly a single source of evil, right? Like, even though this is John Farson's men, you know, behind Farson is the Crimson King. This is a good versus evil tale that is shaping up with this, right? Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting, too, because when Roland looked into it, remember, he saw a lot of things that have happened already or that will happen, right? But there's even that comment of the let there be light, which I thought was interesting. What did you take from that?
I almost feel like the information isn't trustworthy because it's coming from the Wizard's Glass, and is it showing what you want to see? Is it showing what will break you? You know, your worst fears come true? I mean, because that's what he sees, what happens to Susan, you know?
Well, it raises the question, too, of who created these orbs, right? Because there's a backstory to that in Lord of the Rings in terms of how it was created and how it came to Sauron's hands, I believe. The question is, who created the orbs in this world? Is it the old people? Have they confirmed that? I forget.
I don't remember that at this point in time in the story.
Well, if it wasn't them, could it have been we've seen the Crimson King, who we've talked about is kind of like the devil, the one that wants to reap chaos in this world. We've never met or seen the god of this world yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've run into Flag. I mean, he saved what's-his-face in the Wastelands.
You mean he brought him back from the dead? You're talking about Nort?
No, not Nort. The main guy that he saves at the end of the Wastelands. I don't think it was Nort. I can't remember now.
Oh, the TikTok man.
TikTok man.
Okay.
So I think that, I mean, he's supposed to be the Crimson King. So we have seen him. I just always wonder too, with the orbs, to bring it back to that real quick, is are they showing you stuff that you're going to have the idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy? Like, those things don't have to come to pass. Like, Roland could have saved Susan probably, right?
Everything you've said, though, assumes that they have free will. I'm not sure they have free will in this story.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a whole different topic entirely.
Well, I have two books here that are just absolutely opposed. Like, these are enemies of each other. I love reading both sides of the argument. But I got two books here from Sam Harris, The Moral Landscape, which argues that you can have human values and stuff from science. And I have Darwin's Black Box, which explains the biochemical challenge to evolution. So two books that argue different points of view.
What was the Sam Harris book? I haven't read that of his.
The Moral Landscape.
The Moral Landscape. Okay.
I think that came out in 2011, 2013, somewhere around there.
Oh, it's older. Okay.
Yeah. But I read these a while back. I just kind of got them out. And what made me think, what this story is kind of bringing out to me is I'm kind of like trying to dig into what Ka is. Because everything that these characters are doing, they're like, Ka, it's Ka, no big deal, it's Ka, that's why I'm doing this, right?
Did you get annoyed with that in the story? Because there was two things that really annoyed me. And when we do our overall ranking, I talk about that a little bit more when I do my end rant, but...
No, Ka didn't get to me, but it made me wonder what the heck is Ka. Because you'll notice there's times that they can't control what they think, right? Like, I don't know why I think this, I just do. They can't control their physical actions, like, their hands just reacting, like almost kind of like Dragon Ball Z when Roland pissed off Jonas when he's like being like arrested or whatever, and Jonas like pulls out like the gun faster than anyone can see, and like no one can see it except Roland. It totally reminded me of like the Goku and like Cell battles. But here's the thing. If you have absolute free will, you can choose absolutely everything in your life. Fair statement. And this is going to be an inductive argument. This isn't going to be conclusive or you can't back out of it. I'm admitting that there's tons of room for error here. But these characters cannot choose what they want. Roland cannot choose that he wants the tower. He cannot choose to do a lot of these things. It's Ka that's forcing them to do things, right?
Right. And so you have a theory of what Ka is, I assume.
I do. And a lot of that comes from partly this Darwin's Black Box books, but it's the idea of who put the design of Ka into these characters.
Okay. I'm following.
So I think when it comes to decisions, you have tons of things like you've got free will, temperament, desires, past experiences, stuff like that. But when it comes to that desires thing, you'll notice that our characters cannot choose a lot of their things. You can't choose what you want. You can choose to act on it or not, but you can't choose what you want. We have to assume they don't have absolute free will is the basic, is a core argument here. If you don't agree with it, this whole thing you're not going to go with. But for the sake of suspending an inductive argument where I admit there are issues here, go with me that these characters don't have absolute free will, okay?
Okay.
Because the idea is if you had perfect control over what you want, we'd have a lot more people having successful diets and not cheating on their marriages, right?
Indeed.
Okay, so the question is Ka a design put into our characters by some supreme being? Whether it be a god, multiple gods, is something more powerful controlling Ka in our characters?
Or the Dark Tower itself, maybe.
We have evidence of God existing. They reference God all the time, but they've never defined if it's a singular God, multiple gods. Like, they've only referred to one, I feel like. But churches are breaking down, things are breaking down. It's a lot of that anti-religion stigma that you kind of get from Stephen King typically.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can see it in a few places throughout all of the books so far. We've talked about it numerous times.
I was just watching the new Netflix show, Dracula. Have you seen it?
Like the 3 episodes?
Yeah.
I only watched the first episode long time ago, like a month ago.
But there's that scene with the nun who doesn't believe in God. She's a nun and doesn't believe in God. She's struggling with it, right?
Yeah.
And she's looking for a sign. What's going to make me believe, or what am I missing in my life? And do you remember what made her finally believe that God exists?
That the devil was real. So she just had to assume that God was real too.
Because the idea is that if you have absolute, loosely inductive, is if you have absolute evil, you must have absolute good on the opposite side, right? You can't just be neutral, go one way. It has to go the other way too. And that's a lot of what Sam Harris argues about, is that there are universal truths, universal morality in terms of the world. It's an interesting book going into it, but that got me thinking about this a little bit more, that we have the Crimson King who, as far as my knowledge goes, is absolute evil. He's trying to destroy the universe, right? Which is considered a universal morality of bad, right?
Yeah. Destroying life must be bad.
Okay, so now if we accept this is neutral and we have absolute bad, I'm going to argue that there has to be absolute good, is my point.
Okay.
Because a lot of what and again, it's it's not bulletproof. But the general idea that I've seen some philosophers talk about is that if you have a car, okay, and it's got rust on it, you got a bad car, right? Now, if you've got a car with no rust, that car still exists, right? The car is still good. It's a good car. But if you don't have the car, you don't have rust anymore. You don't have evil anymore. So the concept being is evil must exist for the sole purpose of perverting good is the general tenet for that philosophical argument.
Makes sense. You can't have darkness without light, can't have light without dark.
So if we accept that tenet, which you don't have to, but for the sake of this argument, if we have absolute evil attempting to destroy the universe and subvert our characters' MO, if you will, their attempt to get to the Dark Tower, right? You've obviously got at the end of this, the man in black he's saying, don't come after me, give up the tower now. He's giving it to them as a chance to give up. But if we accept that that is what evil's attempting to do, what is good is getting to the tower and stopping that. And that's Ka's design so far, right? That's the purpose of this Ka, is leading them towards the tower. What I propose is, and I could be way off here, for those that if you haven't been following along, I haven't read beyond this book. What I propose is that there is a god or gods, a supreme being or intelligent design. It can't just be Roland. Roland's not perfect. He's not the god of this world. He's not the perfect good of this world, as we saw with Jake in the Gunslinger. There must be, to be philosophically complete, a benevolent, powerful god putting Ka into these characters' wills, if you will. He is designing, intelligent design behind them to thwart, to protect the universe so that evil doesn't thwart it, basically. So what I propose is we will meet the god or gods or supreme being, benevolent, good being at some point in this series.
Okay. So Ka is just Roland's word for God.
No.
In a nutshell.
So this goes back to our God sees the truth but waits conversation by Leo Tolstoy.
Yeah.
He's not doing things for God. He is living out God's will. And God's will
is Ka.
Is Ka.
Okay.
He wants those things to happen specifically, is what I suspect.
So Ka is the action, not the noun.
Yes, it's the intelligent design of this is what these characters must do. It is not something that they choose to do. They do not have absolute free will. Their wants are put in there by intelligent design to lead to this point.
So they're predestined for all these things. I bet you could figure out more if you thought about that.
I don't know if
they're any more than that, though.
I don't know if you're. I don't know if you're putting words into my mouth or if I'm inarticulate here. They don't have the option to choose to do differently, but predestined is much more powerful, where the universe wills it. I'm saying this Ka is an internal design for what their wants are.
Is there a real difference between the universe, the Dark Tower, and God?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. The universe, to me, is a state of matter and of things. In what we know is that the Crimson King is the devil, the bad one of this world, who is the rust that exists for the sole purpose of thwarting the intelligent design put in place by God, which is Ka. Okay. Does that make sense?
No, it does. Yeah. There's a few, obviously we said from the top, there's a few problems with that. Because one of them is time. Time is not a physical trait of the universe, but it does exist. And it has been warped according to Roland and the people in his world.
Okay. Which means that either the god is specifically struggling with something, or his control of time is being poisoned by evil.
If he can control it at all. Maybe one thing that is not within the realm of control.
Yeah, it depends on how he writes this, right? Because the Matrix, remember that, like, the architect, like, you go into this room with all the, like, TV screens, and it's just like, hey, I design everything. Like, there's a lot of ways you can write an all-powerful supreme being, right? I'm calling it God probably just because it's easiest to say.
Yeah.
But I suspect that this being will be able to control things like that.
Okay. Well.
And it's going to
eventually.
So I don't know if it's going to happen, but I feel you said we're going to get there eventually. I feel like you just told me something there.
Well, we're getting to the end of the story eventually.
Okay.
So you'll have an answer, yes or no.
Okay. So that would be my big takeaway from this one. And what will they learn from this? I feel like there's a lot of different ways you can have that conversation with the Supreme Being, right? Like in terms of the Matrix, he gives him a puzzle to figure out how to solve, I believe correctly, to move forward. Bruce Almighty, remember he wanted to like take a vacation, so he gives his powers to like Bruce, like as a human being.
That movie's great.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun ways that authors can enjoy. You know, how does a all-powerful being deal with this power and responsibility? But something has to happen from that meeting with them where I think they won't be able to complete their design because they don't know why they follow Ka. They won't be able to complete this until they talk to him. And I think Stephen King's one of those, like, you know, he's kind of like a mystery, right? And this is a very mysterious series, right? Like you and I are pulling out as much as we can from it. But I feel like he's going to give them a puzzle to solve. And that puzzle is how they are going to defeat and win against the Crimson King and save the Dark Tower, is my presumption.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, authors also like to leave things open-ended. Authors like to leave things vague so we can have discussions about them, open to readers' interpretation. There's a lot there. And I think it's good. I think we're on the path. And I think that we've pulled out a lot.
We're on the beam.
We're on the beam.
We're on the beam.
Back on the beam. We're back on the beam. Back on the beam.
All right, before we do wrap-ups, I still have a lot more notes here. Let's choose one or the other. Do you want to do Pyramus and Thisbe, or do you want to do the Oz discussion?
Let's do Oz. That'll be fun because my niece sometimes watches these and she loves The Wizard of Oz. Okay.
So so somebody wants to go out there and write some more on this on Pyramus and Thisbe. That is the story that predated Romeo and Juliet. So think of this from a Romeo and Juliet story in terms of opposing factions, boy meets girl, and factions don't resolve. It follows a lot of the Romeo and Juliet timeline, but it doesn't resolve the way those do. That was one discussion. Someone go out there and write a page. No, it's actually really interesting. Screw you. All right, Oz. I don't have much here.
You love the love stories, don't you? You're a hopeless romantic.
I think you're a romantic and you don't want to admit it.
It's my down black there, little heart.
I will pull it out of your heart. So, okay, a lot of the Oz stuff hits you on the head, right? It's out there in the open. I had a small note here that was kind of interesting, that there was poison from a nearby town that they can get. Do you know what the town was called?
Munchkinland?
Garland.
Oh, Garland. Judy Garland. That's
subtle,
awesome.
Subtle nod to Judy Garland. And guess what? I think they made reference to red leaves at that point too, in terms of the slippers.
Oh, okay.
So here's what I thought was interesting about the way this was written. Is most people, I think, are going to be familiar with at least the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the bomb, first American fairy tale classic. Not everyone's read it, but it's an interesting one, which had illustrations in it too, much like the Dark Tower series here, if you didn't know.
Yeah, how many books are there in the...
Well, I have no idea.
They're like 8 books or something?
There were spin-offs and stuff like that, but I'd have to do some research on that to speak more intelligently. But here's what I think's interesting is that line when they got there, he talked about how it didn't look the way it was written into the books because it was a combination of all of their thoughts and experiences and almost prejudices. What do you think about that line? I was trying to comprehend that because I was thinking about, I think the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the movie Wizard of Oz, it was like the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the movie Wizard of Oz, it was like the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the movie Wizard of Oz, it was like the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the movie Wizard of Oz, it was like the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the movie Wizard of Oz, it was like the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the movie Wizard of Oz, it was like the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the movie Wizard of Oz, it was like the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the movie Wizard of Oz, it was like the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the movie Wizard of Oz, it was like the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the movie Wizard of Oz, it was like the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the movie Wizard of Oz, it was like the movie Wizard of Oz, if not the mov
the idea of using what is it? There's some like story or movie or something TV show where I know what I remember. I thought about the Twilight Zone, and remember the episode with the little boy that whatever he imagined happened.
No, but I've seen characters like that in comic books and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so I kind of
reminds me of Akira. If you've seen Akira,
no. So I think that was what kind of reminded me of that. This is the imagination of all of them combined together, and it was the realization of everything, and it becomes blurred as a result. And so they're making it all up. It's, not real. And so maybe it's sort of like our subconscious coming through. Or because we know more than they do, there are all those different worlds. Like Jake said, there are other worlds besides these, and there are different Ozes. Ozai? Ozes?
Ozzles?
Ozzless. And so maybe because the tower's breaking down, and again, I don't think this is spoiling anything, because I don't think this is really true, just kind of my interpretation of how you could kind of perceive it, is that the worlds closest to the tower are more magical than worlds further away from the tower, and the ones that are more magical are breaking down faster because they're closer, because they're more magical in nature. And Oz is a more magical place. And so those worlds have collided together and in turn disrupted the thoughts and memories that are rippling across the whole universe of the Dark Tower. And so like a world like ours that has like no magic in it, basically, sadly, we're so far away from the tower that we don't feel the effects of it. And you could even think this is like the Mandela effect. As those different Oz worlds collide, they're changing the perception of what Oz is across the universe of the Dark Tower. And we barely feel that, as a result. Some people might think something a little bit different of it. But where Roland and his quartet are so close, they're able to perceive it a lot better than we are.
Oh, man, you stayed in the book much more than me on that one. I had this really meta experience where, to me, this was commentary on when you write something as an author, is it still yours? Like, does authorial intent matter?
You always say no.
Or once it's published, is it in the hands of the reader? Right? Like, they get to make their own meaning of this, kind of like what you and I do a lot here in terms of literary criticism. To me, this was talking, too, about the Baum put out this design of this is what the Oz Castle was. But it's no longer that, because once it was in Eddie's hand, once it was in, Susanna's mind, it became something else. It became this meta conversation of it belonging to them now at this point in time. Because I got there too because they were so meta about this, of like, oh yeah, this is a story from our world, but it's not a story from their world. It's a story from our world. And then that's going to make some readers question of, is our world the world that Eddie and Susanna came from? Like, it's where does the meta-ness stop in this conversation? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we know that Jake and Eddie are from the same when and where. Up to this point in time, it's never been confirmed.
And Susanna, because of Jack Mort.
Oh, I guess so. And the Riddle book, right?
Yeah.
The Riddle book is all of, or the Charlie and the Choo Choo book is all of their books. So I guess they all from the same when and where.
They're from New York. That is very similar to our New York, but is it the exact same by intent? I don't know. Yeah. But here's them having that conversation about the Wizard of Oz, which is from our world, and it kind of took me out of the story to have this conversation of like, okay, where does art belong once it's released?
Yeah. And we know that he likes messing with us on which worlds are which, because even in this book, at the very beginning, when they leave Blaine, they go into the city. It's not our world, but it is the Stand, which is almost the same as our world. There's just a few slight differences. Yeah. I mean, it's
all right. And
interesting.
I've got one more mistake, but it could be a glitch in the Matrix, which I haven't figured out what the heck these glitches mean, and I know you can't tell me. But they said Jake's mom's name was Megan in this chapter. It's not Megan. Her name's Lori. I went and looked it up. In the previous books, her name's Lori Chambers, and they called her Megan at the end of this book.
Could it be...
Is this a screw-up? Is this the tower breaking down? A glitch in the Matrix? I don't know. But they screwed her name up in this book.
Yeah. Could it be, though, like, that is her... Because, like, Jake's name isn't Jake. That's not his real name.
Oh. Well, then explain this one to me. What is Balazar's first name?
I don't remember.
Well, depends. Sometimes it's Enrico, sometimes it's Emilio.
Yeah.
Either he's screwing up a lot on these names or he's putting glitches on purpose. Because now I'm finding myself, like, when they introduce, like, these tertiary character names, I kind of go back and look again, like, wait, was that what it was? And I'm seeing, like, the ironwood and the sandalwood grips that we talked about last time, or is the gun in his hand. There's a lot of glitches in the makeup in the Matrix here. If these don't get solved by whatever the answer is, if this is, these need to be called out, I feel like, specifically, or readers are going to assume these are mistakes.
Yeah, I don't think an editor would let that get by. I mean, because that's kind of their job. I mean, mistakes do happen.
Yeah. So I'm sniffing. I'm looking for this. All right, let's wrap this book up. What are you going to give me for a rating on this one?
So, my problem with this book is I think I'm reading it, as a 40-year-old now. The last time I read it, I was 20, and I was more into the love story and the action. And I still think it's a good book, and it's still one of my favorite of the series. But after talking with some of our other buddies that are reading this, I might like the next book even more than this one, because this one definitely dropped a little bit for me. So I think I'm going to give it an 8. And that would put it down to kind of tying with the other books, I guess. And I think a lot of it was because I wasn't so enamored by the love story. I got tired of the Ka. I got tired of the love story. Roland, as you said before, he's not a good person. I mean, he's the hero of the story, but that doesn't mean I have to like him.
Sure.
And lastly, I got so tired of hearing about the demon moon, and we never really even talked about what the hell does it even mean, but it's just like demon moon, demon moon. I looked up at the demon moon's coming. I gotta do this because the demon moon. I gotta move because the demon moon. It's smiling, the demon moon. It's a red moon. No, it's a blue devil moon. It's like devil moon, devil moon, devil moon, devil moon. I was so over that. Like, he must have broke the V key on his keyboard by how many times he wrote that damn word. It was exhausting.
With no payoff is part of the problem, right?
Like,
it didn't play an integral part.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's just description that they keep looking up in the sky, and I'm thinking, okay, is the moon been nuked? Is it like destroyed, like in some other sci-fi books and stories and stuff, where you look up and it's all jagged pieces or something? I don't know. Like, there was no payoff for it, and I just thought it was stupid that he had to say it over. It was like worse than palaver. It was just over and over and over again. Sorry, I'm ranting on it, but what do you give it?
This one's interesting because I've been thinking about this, because for me, which isn't for everyone, but this is a Una conversation. I loved Gunslinger. Like, that is the pinnacle so far of the series for me, because it is so chock full of allusions, of literary references, of value and meaning that can only be pulled out through these concrete references that he's making, basically. So there's not a moment of dryness to that, to me. Like if you were dry on some part, okay, great. To me, it was chock full of action, and it's perfect for me. Like, there is something for me on every single page, every sentence, every paragraph drove something forward for me. But it's 200 some odd pages. My collection, I think it's just over 200 pages for my version. Now, this is 1,000 pages. And if I look at just the experiences, there's more, the Blaine battle in terms of this, the Pyramus and Thisbe references, in terms of the Wizard of Oz references. There's more in this book, way more in this book than the first one.
5 times.
But I had to put up with some dry spells. I had to put up with the, get on the horse. Should I get off the horse? I'm an independent woman. I need help. Like, oh, like some parts were really frustrating. So while overall I enjoyed the book more based on experiences, like there were more experiences. It's kind of an unfair way to assess it, but it was. But there was more dry spells too. So that's how I'm going to rate it, is I will look at not just overall unique experience, but I want to look at each paragraph, each sentence, where the parts were that were getting to me. And there were parts that were getting to me. So I'm going to go with an 8.5 for this one.
All right, fair. Yeah, definitely some characters and things that I got tired of, besides just the Devil Moon and the Ka. But I still love the book. I still think it's worth a read. There's still some amazing parts onto it. And if this was the one that they started with and they were making the TV series that got canceled, it would have been amazing. I mean, because there's some really good characters in here. Jonas, can you imagine, Jonas and DePape and the young boys and Susan, and if they'd cut down some of the lovey-dovey stuff, it would have been some great action. Oh, Rhea, she would have been so good. I mean, I don't know who they got to play her, but I think that would have been, there would have been some good stuff here. There would have been some really good stuff here for movie material, TV show material.
Well, all right, guys, thank you so much for checking it out. We do literature breakdowns and discussions all the time. Please subscribe for more discussions like those. Stay tuned. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram for what we're going to be reading next. We are going to be delaying this video, so it'll be coming out a little bit later than we recorded. But we're going to take a small break before we jump into the Wolves of Kala on our way to the Dark Tower, but we will get there. So please subscribe to follow us on that journey. Una out.
Peace.